Hello and welcome to the Emmy Awards. I'm your host, Emmy Cardinelli, and this is my podcast where I talk about what I've been watching or rewatching once a week. If this is the first episode of mine that you stumble upon and you enjoy it, please feel free to follow me wherever you listen to podcasts so you can get notified when I upload a new episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. It means a lot. There will be timestamps in the description because I am going to be talking about a few shows. Basically, this is my first episode after the Big Brother season wrapped, and because of that, I currently do not have any show that I'm recapping week by week the way that I was with Big Brother. So I'm just kind of gonna ramble about the shows I've been watching this past week and share my thoughts on those. So this isn't gonna be super recap style. I'm just kind of gonna talk about the shows as if you're somebody who's seen them and we're debriefing and I'm sharing my thoughts, if that makes sense. So if you haven't seen a show, I'll try to explain. I won't anyways, but timestamps will be in the description. Specifically, I'm mostly going to be rambling about Love is Blind, to be honest. But I also want to talk about High Potential. I want to talk about The Golden Bachelor a little bit. Just, thoughts on stuff that I've been watching. I just recently started watching Only Murders in the Building season 4. I know that was last year. I know I'm late, but I've been seeing stuff about the new season 5, and I was like, I never even watched season 4, so I started watching season 4, and I really like it. But anyways, all that to say, thanks so much for tuning in. Feel free to hop around. Apologies if this episode isn't that long, because I don't have a structured show. I don't know how long I'm really going to talk about any one show, so I apologize for that in advance. I'm going to start with Love is Blind. Now, Love is Blind and I have a long history. I've been tapped in since the beginning, and I will say, and this is something I've always said, I really love watching a reality show and following it through its different eras, and I do think that while Love is Blind is obviously not a reality competition show in the Big Brother sense, where it's the game evolves and changes, and especially with Big Brother now, it's the last 2 seasons have been very different gameplay wise because of the blockbuster. And really quickly, sorry, I want to go on a mini tangent about Big Brother, but it's really interesting to me how revealing Big Brother 27 was about the difficulty of playing with the blockbuster. And I'm not even saying that I don't think, I'm not blaming the bad gameplay on the blockbuster, because I think a good player is able to adjust despite it. But I remember in season 26, people were really clowning on Quinn, and I was I don't think he's that bad. He made some questionable choices, but I think it's just the circumstances suck. And I think if there's anything that Big Brother 27 really emphasized for me personally, is that I do think the blockbuster sucks. I am not a fan of the blockbuster, but anyways, sorry, mini tangent. I just felt the need to say that. But I really enjoy watching a show evolve and progress, and it's been really interesting, specifically with Love is Blind, because I think Love is Blind, the first season, I really feel is the purest that Love is Blind will ever get. Maybe season 2 as well. I'm not sure about, because I know Love is Blind is filmed in batches where a few seasons are filmed before the next one airs. So in that regard, it's I don't know how soon after season 1 aired they do season 2. I imagine that they did it after, because I think it had. Anyways, sorry, I keep going on all these unnecessary changes. But my point is, I've been a long-time viewer of Love is Blind, and I've seen every season from start to finish. I never tapped out. And I have to say, there is something about this season that I have no will to continue. The only reason I have continued is because podcasts I enjoy are recapping it, and I really enjoy their perspective on it. So then when it's making me want to watch it, because I want to then have the knowledge of what happened. Yeah. Anyways, so really, if there wasn't a commentary around Love is Blind, and I wasn't tapped into the discourse and following that kind of stuff, I do, and also the fact that I've really been tapped in from the beginning, I don't know if it's just me, but there's something about this season that really does not have me hooked. I'm not rooting for any couple. The couples that there's like tension, it doesn't feel like good tension or like interesting tension. I'm just uncomfortable. Like, I'm having a really hard time with the season. I don't know if it's just me. There are a few couples actually that I don't hate or that I'm like interested in seeing how they progress. That's a bit dramatic. For me, it's just like the couples I really don't like, I really don't like. I also think there's something to be said, and I don't remember because I haven't watched season 1 of Love is Blind since it aired. I don't know if other people rewatch reality shows of this nature, because like I will rewatch Big Brother seasons, like don't get me wrong, but I don't ever have like the urge to like go back and rewatch season 1 of Love is Blind. Maybe I should, but I feel like as the seasons progress, the pods get longer and longer and more pointless and more confusing in terms of who they choose to focus on and then who ends up being the couple. Like, I don't mean this with any malice because I have nothing against them and I do think that they have an interesting storyline, but we got so much of like Patrick and Casey. We got so much of them, and then they didn't even go to Mexico. And it's like, then another couple, Anton and Ali, we got like one episode. And it wasn't even like they were the focus of the episode where like most of the scenes were about them or something, which obviously they don't normally do that. But even then it was like so rushed through. I feel like we got like 2 conversations of them, and then suddenly it was a proposal with like some flashbacks of like stuff we didn't get to see. It was so confusing. So like they're one of the couples that progressed into the honeymoon round. They're one of the couples we're gonna follow, and we got like nothing of them, but then we got so much backstory on like these other people. You know what I mean? It's like the editing is very confusing to me with Love is Blind. And I had the same issue. I don't remember if it was last season or the season before that, because honestly, the seasons blurred together for me. Like in terms of, I don't remember what number is which. I think it wasn't the last season, because I think the last season was the one that Madison was on. And I think it was the season before that. And I don't even remember what the cities were, but it was the one with the art dealer, the rich guy, and then he and the girl he chose, they didn't end up going to the honeymoon phase. I don't remember what country it was. It's not always the same country, so I don't want to say Mexico if it was Mexico. But I think I would hate the pods less if they edited it better. But the way that they edit the pods really upsets me, because it's like we get so invested in all these people whose storylines then don't come to fruition. But then people I'm supposed to be invested in, we don't get nearly enough. And it's like, I understand. And this is something that early seasons of Love is Blind did really well, where it's like the love triangles were so compelling because like they would still end up with other people. So then they would see each other at the like honeymoon phase, and we don't have that anymore. Nobody from recent memory has seen somebody that they almost picked at the vacation after the engagement but before they move in. You know what I mean? Am I crazy, or am I, because I swear to God that this hasn't happened. So it's like all this love triangle buildup, half the time it's like, okay, I don't really care. Maybe it'll come to fruition this time. And like, I don't know. I just find the editing very confusing. I'm like, who do you want me to be invested in? I don't really like it. Anyway, sorry for all that unnecessary. Let me talk about the actual people. Okay. So Patrick, Anna, Casey. Anna also was talking to somebody else, but I don't remember his name. I really only remember the Anna Patrick of it all because he's Asian, she's Asian. They're both Chinese, or he's half Chinese, half Cambodian. And Anna is Chinese, and both of them were open that they had previously only been interested in white partners. So Patrick had only like dated white women, and Anna had only dated white men. And this is something, you know, there's always the discourse of race and whether you should bring up race. And I'm like torn on it because I think that race is something that is very central to somebody's identity. And I think especially somebody like Patrick, or even Anna, like if they grew up in predominantly white areas, and or even if they didn't, I just think that like your ethnicity and your race does shape a lot of your lived experience. So I think if that's something that you want to be open with, I don't think that should be like not allowed because it might reveal what you look like. But I also don't think that you should, I think whatever, like if you don't want to share that because you don't want to give away how you look, I think that's fine. But I also don't think that mentioning it is necessarily like that shouldn't be allowed. I don't know. Like I do think maybe there should be some like stop, you shouldn't talk about appearance rules that don't seem to be in place, but like in terms of like people shouldn't bring up their race at all, I think that's a valid thing to bring up. I think that's a valid question to have, and I think that there are a lot of people for whom their ethnic identity, their racial identity is very central to who they are, and they wouldn't feel like the other person knows them truly deep down if they don't know the things that they've experienced because of that. You know what I mean? So I just, anyways, but all that to say that Patrick and Anna have like an interesting relationship because neither of them are who they would typically go for, but they also understand each other really well. And I really liked it. I really was rooting for them. And then Anna leaves. So Patrick's only other connection is Casey, who I didn't really like her, but I also like always try to have this disclaimer that I don't know these people and I'm not trying to like make moralistic judgments or like just because I don't like somebody on TV or I don't enjoy what I'm watching of them doesn't mean that that's like that means I hate them. I think they're the worst person ever, that I'm gonna like that's gonna translate beyond just me being like I don't like them, you know what I mean? So like anyways, no ill will to her, but I didn't really enjoy watching her. I have to be honest. I didn't really like her with Patrick, and I think the thing that really, really got me to not, like, the moment that I was like, I don't really know if I, like, this was the moment where I was like, I really don't want Patrick to end up with Casey, was when he has been open about the fact that, like, he was the only non-white person growing up in his community, and she's like, where were your parents from? Like she pushes him and he like is clearly hesitant. And like if I was on the other end of that and I was like, where are your parents from? And then the person was hesitant, I'd be like, oh, you don't have to tell me like if you don't want to. I'm just curious because like I want to get to know you. Like the way she said it was like very much like it felt like not a like I want to know this about. Like I didn't like her reaction because it was kind of a like, why don't you trust me enough to tell me this? Instead of a like, you don't have to share that with me if you don't want to, because if you have some kind of reservation about this because of the experiment and like you don't want to, I think that's a very valid approach of being like, I don't want to in any way indicate what I look like. So I didn't like that, whatever. But then they do end up together. And I didn't think that she was like not into it. Like she didn't seem, there have been first meeting interactions that are significantly worse than this one. Like it wasn't that awkward. It seemed okay. But then we get a like before they go to Mexico, they're like in the hotel or I don't even know. And she breaks up with him. And this was like such an uncomfortable scene because I guess it's not even that she breaks up with him. She's like, I can't continue with this like television show. But and then in the confessional, she's like, I don't think my attraction for him can grow, but that she's not telling him that. And it just bothered me. The whole thing bothered me. I was really angry about all of that. I understood why Anna had to leave for her own personal reasons, that I'm not like vilifying her for that. But it did make me sad because I'm like, what could have been with Patrick and Anna? Who knows? I think Patrick deserves better. He's a handsome guy. I understand. Like, believe me, I'm not trying to be like, he's handsome. He should just feel confident, because I think it's a lot more complicated than that. And I think when your self-image is distorted or like you don't have the best self-esteem, especially if those are like childhood wounds, that's hard to grow out of, because that's like, you know, early learned behavior where you don't view yourself as like desirable or attractive or like worthy, you know, and that's like hard to work through. It's not like you can just be like, well, I know that I'm attractive, so who cares? It's like if you genuinely, like, that's a very, when you learn things early on in your life, it like becomes such a narrative in your head that by the time you realize that's like a distortion and that's not factual, it still is like so instinctual to be like, well, I'm not X, Y, or Z. You know what I mean? At least from my experience, I'm not trying to psychoanalyze Patrick, but as somebody who has like self-esteem issues and a lot of like things like that about my self-image, the ones that are like rooted in childhood and like narratives I heard a lot growing up from bullies or like whoever, the ones that like those are hardest to unlearn. Like the things I went through more recently in my life and the struggles that I went through, not that those aren't hard to unlearn, but it's like it's easier for me to assess like the facts of a situation as an adult than it was for me as a child. So I just genuinely like I didn't understand that like people weren't mean to me because I didn't like because of some other reason. I felt like they were being mean to me because I deserved, like I thought people called me ugly because I was ugly. I didn't think, oh, people call you ugly. Sometimes people are just mean. I didn't have that in my brain. Now, if somebody called me ugly, I'd be like, okay, who cares? But when I was a child, do you know what I mean? Anyways, I'm not to speak for Patrick, but like I have a lot of empathy for like people in those situations. And honestly, this is one of the biggest reasons that I would really struggle to go on Love is Blind, because Love is Blind, for being a show that like the core premise is like you fall in love not based off of what you look like. So much of the conversation, because of the nature of the fact that they meet without, like that they fall in love and they get engaged without seeing each other, so much of the conversation then revolves around like physical attraction, if they're different than your typical type, in a way that would like genuinely fuck me up. If you go on The Bachelor and The Bachelor thinks you're ugly, or even he doesn't think you're ugly, but he's just not attracted to you, he sends you home. There's no big conversation of like, well, I sent her home because I wasn't attracted to her. You know what I mean? Because the physical attraction isn't like a big part of the conversation. But because Love is Blind, the main talking point is, can you fall in love with somebody before you are like, you know what I mean? So, sorry, I keep rambling. But because the main question of Love is Blind is like, can falling in love with somebody overcome like physical appearance and like all those things, because of that, the physical aspect is such an important is such a prevalent conversation of like, they're not typically my type, but I'm still attracted to them, or they're exactly my type, or I would never go approach them in a bar. Like that's constantly a conversation to be had, or even a like, I love you so deeply, but like that is just not clicking for me. Like for me, it's just it would be really difficult to be on Love is Blind, because I feel like what you look like and what your typical type is, and like whether the person that you're interested in is going to be physically attracted to you, is such a conversation that as somebody who has certain issues about like not feeling like the most attractive, I think it would be the most psychologically damaging. Like I feel like that's counterintuitive, but I feel like Love is Blind is the worst show to go on if you struggle with your appearance and image, because image and appearance and attraction is such a huge part of that conversation, where it's like on The Bachelor, they're not like, this person is more physically my type. That's not really ever a conversation. There's obviously like, they're like, the chemistry is here, the chemistry, or like, like they say things like that, but it's never like, she's not who I would typically go for physically. I'm more interested in skinnier people or whatever, which is something that another guy says later, not Patrick in any regard. But like, I just really hate that. I really hate that. And I felt bad for Patrick. Moving on from that conversation. Sorry, I keep going on all these rants, tangents, whatever. Speaking of the guy who said that he's typically attracted to skinny women. It's this guy Joe and this woman Anna, and Anna has a condition that could lead to her being blind. It's not like 100% she's going to go blind, but there's a good chance she could go blind, and there's like no, and she currently has like some, like she can't see super well, I think in low light, like, but it could progress and she could be completely blind, which is like, part of the reason she's doing the experiment, because she wants to get used to like connecting with people beyond the physical appearance, which I think is great. She also like brings this up to Joe because she's like, I'm going to need to have a partner who's okay with that. And I say this with no judgment in my heart, but maybe a little bit of judgment. I think Joe is not that person for you. And I'm not saying that like I'm sure she figured that out, but like just the way he acted, I'm like, no, because like that's not how you show up for people who need some kind of support. Like the fact that he was so irresponsible to even get as drunk as he did, anyways, sorry, I'm like talking about this as if you've seen it. So if you haven't seen it and you don't know what I'm talking about, they do get engaged. I can't even remember if they were in a love triangle, but I don't think so. But they get engaged, and in the like, they always do like a honeymoon type thing before they move in together. And that's where all the couples see each other and everything. Well, like, see the other people they didn't pick, but like the people they talked to in the pods, etc. And this is when in seasons past there would be love triangles and people would see the person they didn't pick in the love triangle. Can't remember the last time that's happened. We should bring that back. But anyways, he at like a cocktail party or a pool party, I don't even know, whatever they call it. Bonfire, I'm overthinking it. It doesn't matter. There's a gathering. And he gets very drunk and goes back to the room. And she goes back and he's like incoherent. And she's like literally, it's like nighttime. So she's like struggling. This is like the exact moment that like a good partner would like show up for her, you know, and like make sure that she can like see and is okay and is not like, you know what I mean? Like she said at some point that like her friends would like sometimes don't notice how bad, like how much she's struggling until she like bumps into things. It's like a good partner would be attentive of that and would be like, okay, I know. And I get that he's like, whatever. Like, I'm not saying that there isn't a learning curve and maybe you wouldn't be like the best right away in supporting somebody who needs like that kind of support. But I really just don't feel like he's cut out for it. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he just had a really bad night. But it was like, it compounded. It was a lot of things. I don't like the way he talked about her. I don't like him for her. I want her to have better. I feel like she can find a really caring, amazing man who's going to like be the kind of emotional support and physical support that she needs, because I don't think you need somebody who can like show up for you. And I don't know if that guy's going to do it. I'm sorry. He seems like a loser. And this is one of the reasons that relationships scare me. It's like, I want to be with somebody who like, if shit hits the fan, they're going to show up for me, you know? I don't know if this guy would do it. I don't even know. Okay, moving on. Oh, okay. The thing that really bothered me about him among like, you know, and again, this is why I hate Love is Blind in terms of like being on it seems like a nightmare, because he's like, I would typically be attracted to like thin women, but I can like maybe learn to not, and I'm like, shut the fuck up. She deserves better. She deserves better. Maybe he's a lovely man, but I don't like him on TV, and I don't think he's the right partner for her. She deserves somebody a lot more like attentive. And I think that's the thing about Love is Blind is like, do I think that there are some people who are like very shallow, or maybe even in this society, it's not even about like just if you're shallow, it's just about like the way dating works, you know? Like, I think it's less about like being shallow. For some people, I'm sure it's about being shallow, but I feel like the positive of Love is Blind is the fact that like you get to just focus on making a connection, and you sit down and you really talk to somebody, and that's how you make a connection first and foremost, is just truly getting to know somebody's soul. I think that's great. I think the biggest issue with Love is Blind is that I feel like it ignores a huge part of like attraction and relationships, which is like physical appearance. It just is. And I'm not saying obviously that's less important for some people or other people, but it's like, no matter how much you love somebody deep down, if you're not physically attracted to them, like that's a huge piece that's missing. And so I feel like Love is Blind sets people up to be like, well, I love this person. I know this person deeply. We're compatible, but I don't feel it, but I should feel it. When it's like, I feel like sometimes you don't feel it and you just don't feel it. It's not about like that person, there's, you know, maybe I'm wrong. But I just feel like that's like the annoying thing about Love is Blind is like, I feel like it makes people be like, I need to do something that feels unnatural to me, when it's like, you actually don't. You shouldn't have to. And I know they signed up for it and they're like open to the experiment. And obviously there are people who like, that's not my typical type, but I am attracted to them. And I'm not saying that. I just feel like there are moments where people are like, I'm not attracted to this person, but I should want to be. I'm being shallow by not being attracted to them, when it's like, no, you're not. Maybe you are, but maybe you're not. Maybe, anyways. Who else did I want to talk about in Love is Blind? Because I'm kind of just hopping all over the place. The homophobic people, that pissed me off. The Ultimatum Queer Love, like, got canceled after 2 seasons, but we have to watch homophobic people on our screen. The guy's named Nick, and then he ends up with a girl named Anna. Or does he? Is there another Anna? No, I'm like, that sounds wrong because I just mentioned Anna. It's not that Anna for sure, but like, I don't remember. Annie, I guess. Yeah. And he's between Annie and Kate. And I really liked Kate. Glad she didn't end up with him, to be honest. But the whole way that their relationship transpired was actually kind of upsetting to me. Not like because I wanted them to be together, but because I really didn't like the way he treated her. Like, I don't know. There's not a single man on this cast that I can think of that I enjoy. Okay, there's one guy who's like, I kind of like him. And I'll get to him in a second, actually, when I talk about his relationship. But, like, he's okay. There's nobody that I, like, really like. Not that the men are particularly ever people I'm really rooting for. But sometimes I'm like, oh, they seem like a nice partner. And, like, I'm really struggling to root for any couples. I can't lie. But anyways, this Nick guy is between two people, and he has a conversation with Kate about like religion. And she's like, well, my mom had cancer and it's really hard for me to believe in God. So I'm just like, I'm not super religious. He doesn't really acknowledge that. Maybe he did and they cut it out. But like from the edit, it seemed like he just moved on very quickly after that. Like not really like, oh, that sucks. Like not asking more questions about that, right? From the edit, maybe he did. Because I feel like anybody, especially if faith is important to you, you would be like, oh, okay, I understand that. Like, it is really hard when something really tests your faith. Would you ever be open to pursuing a religion again? That's very important for me as, like, for a partner. That did not seem to be something that he said in response. Then he's obviously having a connection with Annie as well. And she's like, you said you loved me, Kate is. And he's like, I know, but, like, I'm between two things. And then he brings up the religion thing. And she's like, I told you I wasn't religious. And he's like, no, you didn't. I thought like I and she's like, I did. And he's like, but I didn't think you meant you would never be religious again. Like that's super important to me. And again, I say to Nick, if that's super important to you, then a proper response in that situation would be to be like, I understand that. Like that sounds really hard. Would you ever be open to doing X, Y, and Z? Like, there are things that really matter to me. I can't think of any off the top of my head that, you know, would fit the context of this situation. Obviously, I know my values and things that matter to me, but I can't think of anything that I'm like, I really care about this. And then somebody would be like, well, I don't know, just anything. If somebody was like, I had a really difficult situation around this, but it was something that really mattered to me, I'd be like, oh, I understand that. Like, that sounds hard. Would you ever be like willing to work through that and like still be interested? Like, is the door completely closed for you? Because I personally like really wanted a partner who did X, Y, and Z. I really can't think of a situation that is one-to-one because I think religion is so unique, especially when it comes to grief and like really questioning the world and the universe and God or whatever you believe in when something really devastating like that happens and you witness suffering and loss like that. So like I really can't think of anything that's a one-to-one comparison, and I'm not particularly religious. I would say I'm more agnostic. It's not that, but who cares? Anyways, you don't tune in to hear my opinions on God. But I just think any kind of, if that was genuine, like it felt like he was using that as a scapegoat. Like it didn't feel like he actually, I'm not saying that he doesn't value religion. I'm sure he does. I'm sure he does want somebody to be religious. I feel like he wanted an out with Kate because things with Annie were picking up, so he needed to find something to be like, no, but you didn't. Like, even a response could have been like the way he responded, the tone with which he responded and like the emotion was like so irrational, like not irrational, but like unnecessary and ineffective, where he could have been like, oh, I misunderstood that. And like, that's actually really important to me. And I'm sorry I didn't make that clear, but like, I don't think that we're compatible because this matters to me. He like got angry with her about like, I didn't know that you would never, like, you know what I mean? If you watched it, hopefully you know what I mean. But like, it was so insufferable. I'm sorry, I really can't stand him. And then he's talking to Annie and he's like, how would you feel if your kids were LGBTQ? And then they talk about it being a fad. And she's like, I'd love my kid no matter what, but I wouldn't be super excited. I'd be like, do you know what you're getting into? And it's like, what the hell do you mean by that? Like, what do you mean? Do you know what you're getting into? If your kid is like, especially because I mean, honestly, I don't know, because I think even if you know that you're gonna be accepted, it's still a scary thing, because when you're young, figuring out who you are is scary within itself, and then realizing that there's something about you that is maybe different than what you thought was the standard growing up is like very overwhelming. Like, I'm from personal experience, so it's like, even I knew my parents weren't homophobic, but even then it's like, but it was still a very vulnerable thing to be like, do I know this? Am I confident enough about this that I want to tell my parents, you know? So it's like, I can't imagine, especially if you grow up in an extremely religious where you probably are being told these things are sins and these things are bad, and you know, that's ingrained in you. If your kid feels comfortable enough to tell you that, like, they probably know. It's probably not a fad. It's like, what do you mean? They're doing it like it's a fad, but I don't even know. I also have to say that it's not a fad, and that's a very deeply personal thing that is difficult to come to terms with, let alone share with your parents, especially if they're not the most loving and accepting and welcoming. But I also think that there's something like really, the older I get, the more I find it frustrating with this attitude that a lot of adults have towards teenagers or young people, where it's like, well, you just don't know yet. You just don't know yet. And I'm not even talking about just sexuality. I'm talking about like that attitude of like, if you have an opinion or if you really care about something, being told, well, you'll change your mind. I think that's so detrimental to children, to the point where it's like, even if my child was like, I think I feel this way about who I am, listen, and I'd be like, I love you no matter what. And I'd leave the space open for them to figure out who they were. Like, I'd be like, you know what I mean? Like, I think even if on not like an identity level, because I think the things are very different, but even if somebody like my child really wanted to be a painter growing up and they really cared about that, but then they get older and they realize, I don't care about painting. I'm not going to like shut them down and be like, you shouldn't be a painter. So it's like, why would you shut your child down in figuring out who they are, even if it's not permanent? Like, even if they're like, and obviously like whatever, like even if my kid is like, I think this is who I'm interested in, and then they date somebody and they're like, actually, I never even liked girls, I never even liked boys. That's great. Explore yourself, figure out who you are, whatever you feel in that moment. If it's not hurting you, if it's not hurting other people, then explore who you are, figure out who you are. You know, I think I hate the idea of quote unquote fads, because I feel like that is something that adults tell young people in order to like be like, I know better than you and like you will change your mind, when I think that's just pointless. I think the things that I've changed my mind about, I've done so on my own accord, and the things that I have dug my heels into or like become more firm in those stances, I've also done on my own accord. Other people telling me you'll change your mind one day about the things that I felt very strongly about as a child didn't at all. And again, I'm not saying, and even less so if somebody was telling me, which luckily I never experienced this, but if I had somebody telling me, no, I mean, you'll change your mind and you'll be straight one day, as a child, I'd be like, what the hell are you talking? You know what I mean? So I feel like it's so detrimental to have that attitude towards your children in general, of like, it's just a fad, you'll get over it, it's just a phase, because it's like, life is about phases. You know, life is about trying new things. Life is about really wanting to be an actor and then growing up and realizing that you don't want to be an actor. And that doesn't mean that passion you had when you were younger and that like interest you had in theater wouldn't then allow you, like, provide you something else. I loved theater growing up. I thought about being an actor, and then when I got to middle school, I like did some behind the scenes work, and my love for theater, even though I do not aim to be a performer today in any capacity, like I don't dream of being an actress, I don't dream of performing, like that passion that I had for theater and all the things I learned in my exploration of theater as a medium and watching plays and participating in plays has given me a knowledge and a passion for storytelling that I feel like has translated in other things that I care about, such as this podcast and talking about scripted TV and characters. Like, I think so much of the theater that I pursued has given me a different facet with which to, a different lens with which to analyze television, because not only am I thinking about the overarching story the way I would like analyze a book, but I'm constantly thinking about character motivations. And that's something I learned through theater. So like, you know what I mean? I think even if something is a phase or something is a temporary thing that you explore and you try out and you think that you don't like it, that doesn't make it any less valuable. Not that people's identities are fads. I just hate the idea of like, it's a fad, it'll pass regardless, because I think there's beauty in change and figuring out who you are and Anyways. Sorry, that was an unnecessary tangent, but it really pissed me off. But he ends up with that girl instead and not Kate, which, you know what, I don't even care. But it's just like, I really hated the way they edited it. They also talked about spanking their kids, which, like, at this point, I'm sorry. If you genuinely, and I'm not a parent, but I don't care to be like, I'm not a parent, so my opinion matters less. No, regardless of if I'm a parent or not, I can read. I can look up data. And there is proven science that spanking your children is detrimental to their well-being. So why would you do it? But I guess half the time, or not more than half the time, these people don't even believe in science. So what am I saying? But it's just like, I don't know. I can't imagine being a parent. I'm so scared of being a parent because I'm like, I understand how, like, delicate children are and how impactful little things that you think, even if you're not trying to hurt your, like, children, you can, like, traumatize them for life. You can traumatize them for life from things that you thought you were doing it out of the kindness of your heart, So it's like, I can't imagine doing something that there's, like, data that bad. I can't imagine it. It baffles me. So that really angered me. I think we need to we need to judge people who openly talk about spanking their children. And I think overwhelmingly people do, but I hate that this is even a conversation that some people have. And there was a clip from, I don't even know who these people were, but I saw this clip of somebody being like, I don't believe in hitting my kids. And somebody was like, I don't like that you're using that word. Like, it's not hitting. And it's like, but that is what you're doing. You are hitting your children. So, like, at the end of the day, people forget when they teach their children, when they discipline their children, when they interact with their children, that their children will grow up to be adults. And the behaviors you learn as a child shape you into adulthood. So why are we teaching children that physical violence is ever the way to punish somebody, to teach somebody something? Do you not think that that's like a bad lesson? Do you think if you messed up at work, you made a big mistake at work, do you think your boss should be allowed to physically assault you? Because if you don't, which you shouldn't, why on earth do you think that's a proper way to teach somebody, hey, that's wrong. Hey, don't do that. You made a mistake there. Like, it's so baffling to me. I think we need to stop. They're like, I think kids need discipline. Yes, kids need discipline. They don't need to be physically assaulted. Okay, can we stop this? It's angering me. I hate these people. I'm sorry. I don't like hating people on reality TV. And I believe everybody's capable of change and growth. But like, if you in 2025 confidently say that you should hit your children, then I think you're a bad person. And I don't care to be like, I don't know these people. I think that is a very dangerous and stupid thing to say on television. And I think that compounded with the fact that you would not treat your children with dignity and respect if they were queer, I think you suck. And I hate these people and I want them off my screen. That being said, I think that they, in the honeymoon, whatever, they don't have many issues that I can recall. Maybe I tuned them out, but I hate them. I don't care. They would hate me, so who cares? Anyways, and I don't hate them in like a real sense and like it's going to keep me up at night, but I really am tired of these kind of people on my television screen, okay? Can we move past this? I think it really stings because they took away the queer ultimatum. It's like gay people can't have anything. We can't have rights. We can't have fun reality TV. The straights get everything. These are dark times. Anyways, sorry. Moving on from the homophobic people. Edmund and KB. Edmund is somebody who, all those things I was saying about how like your early like childhood has long lasting impacts. And I think, and I understand Patrick and the reasons that he still has, like I feel like Edmund is another person who I'm like, he is such a clear, I don't want to say example because he's a human being, so I'm not trying to be like, he's a case study, but like Edmund had a very difficult childhood. And I feel like there are a lot of emotional regulation, communication, and I think there are some very clear issues that Edmund has that I'm like, he needs to work through some stuff. And I say that with nothing but compassion in my heart because I can't imagine, like everything he went through sounds like really, really difficult. And that being said, I don't think that KB, I always want to have a level of grace that the show is edited and it is manufactured and they are in a stressful environment of like, I don't know how much sleep they're getting. I don't know how much food they're eating. I don't know You know what I mean? I have all these things where it's like I don't want to assume 100% that that's how somebody is, you know? The reason I feel more confident being like I do not like these people when I'm talking about like Nick and Annie. Nick more than Annie, but Annie's right up there with him in my opinion because they agree. For me, that's like a values thing. It's like they genuinely have different morals than I do because I don't believe in hitting your children and I don't believe in rejecting your children or like condescending to them of like, you should know better. Do you know what you're getting into? If they're like, I think I'm gay. Like that's a moral failing or not failing because whatever. But for me, that's a moral distinction that I'm like, well, we are not. Anyways, sorry, moving on. Not to go back to them, but like Edmund is a very confusing person because I think he has a lot of issues, but it's like, I don't know if it's like morals more than it's like a trauma response, but I also don't want to like diagnose him or be clinical. I hate when people get clinical. I just feel like he's told us that he's been through some stuff and I don't know how much he's worked through. And I don't know if he's like, again, maybe it's just the environment. Maybe they're only showing the bad parts. I'm somebody who I'm very emotional and I'm sure that if you recorded me, I would have a moment where I don't know, because it also, some of Edmund's, like the conversation in the honeymoon phase or whatever, when they were talking about having sex and the way that he was like, I'm such a nice guy and like, I'm not going to have sex with like, and you're not having sex with me. That does kind of get to a moral, I don't know if I like that area because while I have to be honest, I hate when men are like, I'm a nice guy. I hate that. I hate that because it's like, no, you're not. No, you're not. Because nice guys, in my opinion, like genuinely good people, guys or whatever, don't have this attitude of like, I'm not getting something even though I'm being such a good person. I don't think that makes you a good person. Maybe I'm wrong. It's really, and obviously Edmund's a real person, and so I'm not trying to compare him to a fictional character, but it's like the Dean, I don't remember his last name, Dean from Gilmore Girls archetype where he's like, I was such a good boyfriend to you. I'm an angel. I put up with so, like, I hate that. I hate that because it's like, if you want to be with me, then don't spend time with me when I'm doing something you supposedly hate and then be like, I'm so good for doing this thing with you. No, like that's so lame. Anyways, so like, and obviously, anyways. But I really, and obviously the sex thing is a bit more sinister. Or sinister is a bit dramatic, but it's a bit more intense because like being like I'm a nice guy and I'm not, and we're not having sex is a little bit more like I really didn't like it. That was when Edmund like really lost me, and I'm like I really don't like any of the guys. I don't dislike Jordan actually. I'll get to Jordan in a second, but I don't know. I like KB a lot and I want to root for Edmund's happiness, but I don't know. I think he needs to get like, I don't know. I have a lot of empathy for people who like have had difficult childhoods and I genuinely wish him healing. But I think it's like a hang up he has of like, I think she was spot on where she was like, you're feeling this way because the other men had sex and we're the only couple that didn't have sex. And I do think that's a huge part of it. Like, I do think that he probably is like, I want to have sex before we get married. And that is probably something that was already bothering him. But I do think the fact that everybody had sex and he didn't, all the other couples were having sex and they were the only one, I do think that got to his head. Or got in his head, and that did contribute. So I don't disagree at all with that assessment of KB's. I think it's also, for me, we didn't see this in the pods, but it's another guy, when Edmund was like, when the guys were talking about like who had sex yet, Edmund was like, we haven't. And then somebody was like, oh yeah, she's like waiting until marriage. So it seemed that was something that she probably established, like talked about in the pods, because I'm like, how would he know this other guy? So I feel like based off of that, it sounds like that was an expectation that she had already set up before they got engaged. So in that regard, I don't think, like, I feel like if people are like, I don't want to get married to somebody before I have sex with them, I think that's a valid thing you know, if you want to wait until marriage, if people are like, I need to know if we're compatible in that regard before we say yes, I think whatever path you choose, it's super valid. I think for me, the part where it's like, I feel that it really becomes like frustrating to me and I really don't like it at all, is it seems like that's an expectation that they set and now Edmund's like upset about it. You know what I mean? If it was like she never mentioned that and then suddenly she's like, oh, we're not having sex until we get married, then maybe it would be like, well, even then, I don't know. It's like 4 weeks. But I also understand if like that's a very important part of a relationship. Because it's not even about the like, I'm making you wait. It's like, we have to wait until we're married. But then it's like, what if that's a huge factor in you being like, I don't think we're compatible? Because that's very important to you. I don't know. I didn't like his reaction at all. This season is really testing me. Anyways, last couple that I want to talk about. And if there was anybody else, then I forgot about them and I'm sorry. But Jordan, Sparkle Megan, and then the other guy that she was with, whose name I don't remember because I really didn't like him. So Jordan is a single dad. He has a child who has diabetes. And Megan, who goes by Sparkle Megan, because she really likes sparkles. Although I will say she's not like particularly blinged out. Like not that many sparkles that I can recall. I can't remember a single like outfit that was like, ooh, she's very sparkly of Megan. I don't know, but cute nickname, I guess. Megan is between Jordan and some other guy who, again, I didn't remember his name because I don't like him. Let me look up his name, actually. I have the cast list right here. I can find him. Mike. I really didn't like Mike. I'm not going to lie. I really didn't like him. I didn't like him from the beginning. He gave me, like, I don't know. I didn't like him. But what really set me off, what really made Mike an enemy of mine, not in a serious way. Again, I don't know these people and I don't care about, like, you know, anyways. I don't feel like, sorry that I always make all those disclaimers, but like I want to be clear that I genuinely like do not hold anger towards these people in my day-to-day life. Like I come on here, I share my thoughts, I talk to the people in my life who are also watching the show, and then I move on with my day. Like Big Brother, the show's over. I haven't thought about the people that I'm not like following. I like Ashley, love her watching the show. Vince getting papped is funny. Like I'm keeping up here and there, but it's like it's not like these people are like living in my brain, you know? So like genuinely I don't hate these people in a serious way of like they're holding space in my brain, to be clear. But Mike really angered me when he went into a conversation with Megan, who, by the way, her father had type 1 diabetes and he passed away due to complications. And that was brought up when, in her conversation with Jordan, when Jordan talked about his son having type 1 diabetes. Mike comes into a conversation with Megan and he's like, when we have kids, our kids need to be really healthy. One of the guys here, his son has diabetes, and that was like shocking to me. I didn't know that could happen. I had a friend, I'm quoting him, I didn't say any of this. He said he had a friend who was pre-diabetic and he just changed his diet. And I was so angry. I was so angry watching this because it's like, not only are you like cruel, you're cruel and wrong. Like you're stupid and you're being horrible. Pick a struggle. Like, first of all, there's a difference between pre-diabetic and diabetic. Once you're diabetic, your diet can't fucking change that. And also there's a huge difference between type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes. And there is no pre-diabetic for type 1 diabetes. It's something you're born with. So like, and also even if the reason this child had diabetes was because his diet sucked or whatever, why the fuck are you talking about that? That's like a moral failing, okay? Like that's so fucking stupid. And like, it really angered me. I'm sorry. It really angered me because it's like, first of all, you're just a dumbass because you don't know that there are different types of diabetes. You don't know people can be born with diabetes. You didn't know that. You thought people only get diabetes because of their diet. People can just fix their diet and they don't get diabetes. Please. Like, he's that stupid. Anyways. But then on top of being stupid, it's like you're a judgmental asshole. It was as if he thought that like it was a moral failing that this man's son had a disability. It really angered me. It also, like, you're talking to somebody whose father had type 1 diabetes. Did he not know this about her probably they had never had a conversation about this. It also didn't show in the edit of her being like in any way responding to him about her father. So like, I don't know. Because if this happened to me, I'd be like, I'd be like, there are different types of diabetes is the first thing that I would say to him. I'd be like, there's a difference between type 1 and type 2. And then I'd be like, oh, and by the way, my father had type 1. So what the hell are you talking about? But she didn't react that way at all. And if she did, it wasn't in the edit. We do know that they like to edit things. But as soon as he said that, I was like, please God, let her not end up with him. And I wasn't even particularly like a huge fan of Megan, not because of any one reason or another. She just like, there was nothing that I was like, I really like her. I think honestly, now with the hindsight that she didn't end up with Mike, I do think if I went back and I watched her scenes, I could maybe enjoy her a bit more. But there was so much tension in my brain where it was like, is she going to end up with Mike? Quite literally is my least favorite person on the show right now. Well, him and Nick are tied, actually. But I feel like the Mike stuff happened before. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they were in the same episode. But like, anyways, in terms of her options, he was the one that I really was like, please do not end up with him. I do not want to see more of him. Jordan seems like a nicer guy. I'm rooting for Jordan. I really am. And it angered me that another man would talk about his child that way. And even his parenting. Like, there was like an implication that like, how could he have caused his child to have diabetes or something? Like, it angered me so much. And Jordan seems like a nice guy. Like, I enjoyed watching him. He's like the one person who hasn't really upset me. There was a moment during the party when Joe was acting really weird where he was acting kind of weird too. But Megan was like, can you stop doing that? And he did kind of stop like almost immediately, where Joe was not able to. So that's a point for Jordan. He was a little bit annoying, but he recovered. I like Jordan. I hope that I like him and Megan. I'm rooting for them. We'll see how it goes. I think there's also just something, like, I think it's nice that this child, whose name I literally cannot remember and whose name I do, Luca, I think is his name. If I'm wrong, I'm so sorry. But I think it's really sweet that if Megan and Jordan do end up together, that like she has some experience and knowledge about type 1 diabetes. I think that's great. I like Jordan. He's like the only person who I'm like, I actually kind of enjoy you. Maybe that's crazy. Maybe people really dislike Jordan. The one thing that sent me was they were talking about tattoos and he's like, I have a few small ones. Meanwhile, he has like full sleeves. That cracked me up. Actually, the one thing that bothered me about Jordan is at some point he's like talking about his tattoos and he's like, this is my white girl tattoo. And it's like the Om symbol. I hated that. That was cringy. That was problematic. That was icky. I didn't like that. I'm not like a Jordan stan, but genuinely of like all like the men, because the women I like most of them. I'm enjoying. I really like KB. I really like Anna, and I like want to see better for her. I like Megan. Megan's kind of a question mark for me in terms of like, I don't really know if I like her that much, but I don't dislike her. I don't dislike any of the women, but I mostly dislike the men. So that's where I'm at with Love is Blind season 9. By the time this episode goes out, there might be another drop, so I'll talk about that next week, I guess, but that's where I stand right now. I will say, too much pod. Sorry for all the unnecessary tangents I went on. Before I wrap up, I've been watching a few other shows, and I was like, maybe I can share my thoughts on those other shows. But I have to be honest, I haven't watched enough of The Golden Bachelor to have an opinion. I don't really know what I would say about High Potential. I feel like I might have mentioned High Potential in passing on this podcast. And like the only thing I can say about High Potential is that it's really good and I really recommend it. Like, I don't have anything eloquent to say about like the storyline, if that makes sense. I just think it's really good. High Potential is a really good show in that it's like a procedural drama. So it's like, I love that personally, where there's like a new mystery or a new crime or whatever to solve each episode. So it's enjoyable in that capacity. But High Potential is like not just a cop show. It's like about this woman who has like a higher IQ. I don't know what the exact terminology they use for her, but she like is a genius, low key. basically. And so she works with the police. She's like a consultant and she helps figure out the cases. So it's like really, really compelling. I love her character. And the storylines are really good. It's such a good show. Like, it's such a good show because it's serious, but it's also like not super heavy. Like SVU, which I am still watching here and there, SVU gets really heavy. And like, I mean, obviously, and I think there's value in that sometimes, but it's like High Potential. It's like dramatic enough and like engaging enough, but there's like a good amount of levity and like it's not gory or like, it's just great. It's a really great show. It also takes place in LA, and I live in LA, and I love when shows take place in the city that I live in. It's the reason I got into 911. That and the fact that I found out that there were gay people in it. Because my mom kept saying, like, I would FaceTime my mom and I'd be like, what are you watching? And she's like, I'm really into the show 911. And she would describe it to me and I'd be like, that sounds not interesting to me at all. And then people were talking about Buddy on my timeline. And I was like, there are gay people in it? I should watch it. And then when it was in LA, I was hooked. I will say, and this is like maybe a little silly of me, or not silly. I'm not going to invalidate myself, but like, genuinely, I think it was either the first episode I did of the year or in like my last episode of the year, I did a like 2024 in review and I talked about the shows that I watched. And I actually think that it was the first episode of the year. Actually, now that I think about it, because I remember, I cut this part out, actually, I'm pretty sure. Because I think I recorded it before the fires, but I started editing it after, or like I finished it up after. I don't remember. The fires started, like the LA fires, like the first week of the year from my recollection. So it wasn't a like, anyways, all that to say, I talked about in my podcast, and I ended up cutting this part. Maybe I didn't end up cutting it out, actually, now that anyways, but I remember saying, I was like, I love 911, and my mom's like, or somebody once asked me, like, isn't that kind of stressful because you live in LA and like there's a bunch of, and I'm like, no, because 911 to me is so unrealistic and catastrophic that I'm like, you know what, it doesn't stress me out because I'm like, that's never going to happen. When is there going to be a tsunami that in Santa Monica that floods the whole city? That's not going to happen. And while that didn't happen, there were like very like the worst fires ever. And I did at the beginning of the year, I was like, you know what, it's not funny anymore. Who knows what could happen? We're living in unprecedented times, and the climate is falling apart. We could have a tsunami that floods all of LA. Who the fuck knows? So I honestly stopped watching 911, and I haven't watched the last 2 seasons. And I really need, like, I didn't watch season 8, and I don't know if season 9 has started or is starting soon, but I should watch season 8. You know, now that I'm catching up on shows I never watched old seasons of. Once I catch up to Only Murders in the Building, I'll go back and I'll rewatch season 8 of 911. I really couldn't watch it because I was like, I started getting really anxious and like being like, I feel like I'm going to manifest this. Like I said, literally, I recorded that podcast like right before the fires, and I was like, 911 is so unrealistic to me because nothing that crazy ever happens in LA. And then something really crazy happened in LA. And now I'm like, I don't want to jinx anything. So I haven't been able to watch 911 because it stressed me out too much. I was like, now I'm actually going to watch it being like, this could happen. This could happen to me. Although based off some of the stuff, I'm like, I don't think that could happen. I think I can, like a whale ate Hiram Lodge. I don't think that episode has aired yet. Maybe it has. And he wasn't Hiram Lodge. It was just the same actor who plays Hiram Lodge. But in my brain, he's Hiram Lodge. So like, anyways, sorry, I went on an unnecessary tangent. But like High Potential, I love that it takes place in LA. Like that's super fun for me because I live here. But it's just such a good show. The characters are so good. It's not really a cop show because the main character isn't really a cop, but it is about like crime and like that kind of thing. If you enjoy crime shows, procedural dramas, if you will, which I am a fan of, where there's like one big drama per episode, I really enjoy that. I really am a fan of that kind of thing, and High Potential is just so good. It's so well written. The mysteries, like the plot twists are really good. The mysteries too are like always really interesting. Like the last episode, like last week's, because again, by the time this podcast episode goes out, I'm recording this Monday night, so by the time this podcast episode goes out, there's a chance that like Tuesday's episode of High Potential will have already aired. So I'm talking about last week's, not the 7th of October's episode. I'm talking about the episode that aired September 30th, not the one that aired the day after I'm recording this, because I haven't seen that one. But the last episode that I watched of High Potential, it was like there was a murder, right? And then it was like he got murdered because he was going to donate his, like it was for his organs, basically. Very interesting. The plot twists were great. It was really interesting. It was sad. It was a big portion of the last episode, the one that aired September 30th, had to do with like a father, the man who died. He had just recently like reconnected with his estranged daughter, or maybe he had never been in her life. I can't remember, but like he recently got back in her life, and they were like making a connection. And the main character, she has a daughter whose father disappeared, and who she now knows, the main character, she knows that he's alive, but she hasn't told her daughter. And then her daughter finds out, and like she obviously gets upset because she's like, my dad's been alive this whole time. And he, like, that's a very difficult thing to deal with. So it's like, it's very, very, very powerful, the way that like the storylines interconnected very well. Great show. I love all the characters, not just the main character, but it's super, and I love her. It's a super great show. I really do recommend it. And I think also there's a joy to weekly releases and like standard TV. That's always a joy in the age of streaming. It's nice to get stuff once a week. It's great, super fun. So I really do recommend High Potential. I recently started watching season 4 of Only Murders in the Building, and I'm really enjoying that too. So even though I'm super delayed, if I have thoughts about that, I'll talk about it next week. I talked about Love is Blind way longer than I thought that I was going to, but I guess I had a lot to say. Thank you so much for tuning in. Sorry if this episode was a little bit shorter. Honestly, for the last few months, my episodes have been like almost 2 hours, which is like double. So I think this will be a more standard episode, and I'm going to try to get back to like 1 hour a week-ish episodes. Obviously, if I have more to say, I don't mind the 2-hour episodes. Like I enjoyed that because I was covering a lot that I wanted to talk about. But right now I don't know which show I want to cover like week by week. I guess I'll cover Love is Blind if I have more to say until that wraps up. If I have stuff to say about The Golden Bachelor, I'll share some thoughts about that. I haven't really been super hooked this season, to be honest. But I'll try, and I'll share any thoughts if I have them. And yeah, and I'll share my thoughts on just whatever I've been watching or rewatching. But maybe there's some show coming back soon that I forgot about that I can like make that my new weekly recap kind of thing. But I don't know. I can't think of any show that's like, or maybe some show will premiere. If you have a show recommendation, it can be old. I can go back and I can do some kind of like sharing my thoughts weekly on a show that aired like years ago. I did that with Bachelor Pad. So like if you have any suggestions, let me know. Feedback is always welcome. I hope you enjoyed the episode. This was genuinely like I went on so many different tangents, but I hope you enjoyed it. If you enjoyed it, please feel free. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please feel free to follow me wherever you listen to podcasts so you can get notified when I upload a new episode. I think my release schedule going forward will be kind of Wednesdays, Thursdays for the foreseeable future, unless I find some show that I'm like recapping weekly. Then that'll depend on when that like show releases. But I think for now, I'm going to continue what I've been doing, like what I started with the Big Brother season, since I'm kind of not covering anything specific. I think this just works well where I'm recording like Sunday, Monday, get the episode out Wednesday, Thursday-ish around then. So hopefully that works. But again, schedule to change. It's good to follow me because I do not currently have like a structured release date for the podcast. It changes based off of what I'm covering. So it's good to just follow me because that way you get notified right away when an episode goes live. But my social media is also linked down below, and I do post updates on there. So that's welcome. But of course, following me is the best way to get updated. You can also subscribe on YouTube if you're listening to this on YouTube, and that's how you find the podcast. Hope you have a great week. Thank you so much for tuning in. Any suggestions recommended below. I feel kind of like I'm floundering after the Big Brother season ended. but I'll find something. I'll get back into my groove. Hope you have a great week. Bye.